In the midst of a Category 4 hurricane, my husband shoved me out of the car to rush his pregnant mistress to the hospital. 30 minutes later, he returned and was paralyzed by the terrifying sight. Hello everyone. Thank you for being here with me today. Before I begin my story, grab a warm cup of tea and get comfortable. I'd love to know what time of day you're watching this video. Please comment M for morning, A for afternoon, or E for evening. Now, let me take you into this story. The wind wasn't just howling, it was screaming. It sounded like 1,000 banshees tearing at the metal frame of our car. Rain lashed against the windshield in sheets so thick that the wipers, moving at frantic speed, were useless. We were inside the belly of Hurricane Isolde, a Category 4 monster that had turned I-95 into a river of gray death. And yet, my husband, Derek, was pressing the accelerator. "Derek, please," I begged, my hands gripping the leather handle above the door until my knuckles turned white. "We can't see anything," the news said to shelter in place. "We're going to die out here." His hands were clenched so tight on the steering wheel that the veins popped out in his forearms. He didn't look at me. He stared straight ahead into the abyss of the storm, his jaw set in that stubborn, terrifying way I had come to dread over the last few months. "Shut up, Audrey," he snapped, his voice barely audible over the roar of the wind. "I promised Grandma I'd be at her birthday. I don't break promises. Stop being such a coward." "A coward?" The car shook violently as a gust of wind, clocked likely at over 130 miles per hour, broadsided us. I felt the tires lose traction, hydroplaning for a terrifying second before Derek wrestled control back. This wasn't about a birthday. No one drives into a hurricane for a birthday cake. I knew something was wrong, but I didn't know the half of it. Then, his phone rang. It wasn't the standard ringtone. It was a specific, cheerful melody that cut through the tension like a knife. The screen lit up on the dashboard console. The name displayed was Tiffany. Derek's face changed instantly. The mask of angry determination cracked, replaced by a frantic, sweating panic. He jabbed the speaker button. "Tiffany? Tiff, are you okay?" His voice dropped an octave, softening into a tone of tenderness I hadn't heard directed at me in years. "Derek!" A scream pierced through the speakers, followed by ragged, hyperventilating sobs. "It hurts. Oh my God, the water, there's water everywhere. I think the baby is coming." The color drained from Derek's face. "What? Now? You're not due for another month." "I fell," she shrieked. I was scared of the storm and I tripped in the kitchen and now, blood. "Derek, our son. Save our son. Our son." The words hung in the air, heavier than the storm pressure outside. My heart stopped beating. I sat frozen, my mind trying to process the impossibility of what I just heard. Tiffany. His secretary. Pregnant. Son. Derek didn't even look at me. He didn't offer an explanation. He screamed at the phone, "I'm coming. Hold on, I'm turning around right now." He slammed on the brakes. On a flooded highway. In a hurricane. The heavy SUV skidded, fishtailing violently. I screamed as my head slammed against the side window. We spun 180 degrees, facing the wrong way into oncoming traffic, if there had been any traffic. But the road was desolate, abandoned by everyone with a shred of sanity. "Derek, you're going to kill us." I cried out, clutching my throbbing forehead. "The car is too heavy," he muttered, his eyes darting around wildly like a trapped animal. "The water is rising. If I get stuck, if I don't make it fast enough, my air." He turned to look at me then. And in his eyes, I didn't see my husband of 3 years. I saw a stranger. A monster. "Get out," he said. I stared at him, blinking. "What?" Get out, he roared, unbuckling his seatbelt and leaning across the console. He threw the passenger door open. The storm invaded the car instantly, wind and rain blasting my face, stinging my skin like needles. You're dead weight, Audrey. The water is getting deep near the exit. I need to move faster. Get out! Are you insane? I shrieked, grabbing his arm. It's a Category 4 hurricane. If you leave me here, I'll die. You're sentencing me to death. He shoved me. Hard. His hand slammed into my chest, knocking the wind out of me. He grabbed my shoulders and physically wrestled me toward the open door. I clawed at the seats, at his jacket, screaming his name, begging him to remember who I was. His wife. Audrey. My son's life is worth more than yours, he spat, his face twisted in a snarl. He is the heir to the Coleman legacy. You're just a barren waste of space. With one final, brutal shove, I tumbled out of the high SUV. I hit the asphalt hard. The impact scraped the skin off my palms and knees. I landed in a puddle of freezing, oily water. Before I could even scramble to my feet, before I could bang on the door, he slammed it shut. I heard the engine roar, a sound of raw power. Derek! I screamed, my voice ripped away by the wind. Derek, no! He didn't look back. The taillights of the black SUV flared red for a second, then faded, swallowed by the white curtain of rain. He was gone. He had chosen. He had thrown me into the eye of the storm to save his mistress and their unborn child. I lay there on the cold, unforgiving highway, the rain mixing with the hot tears streaming down my face. I was going to die here. Alone. Betrayed by the man who vowed to protect me. Before I tell you what happened next, before the convoy of armored cars appeared and the world turned upside down for Derek Coleman, I need to take you back. You need to understand how a billionaire heiress ended up shivering in a ditch, pretending to be a nobody, and how the man I loved turned into a monster. Thank you so much for listening. I see so many of you tuning in from all over the country. Please, comment down below which city you are watching from. I'd love to know who is keeping me company as I recount the worst night of my life. Lying in that ditch, with the freezing rain soaking through my clothes, my mind didn't go to the future. It didn't go to survival. Strangely, it went to the past. It went to the lie that had brought me here. My name is Audrey Sterling. If you follow finance or old money politics, you know the name. My grandfather is Senator Arthur Sterling. My family practically built the banking infrastructure of the East Coast. I grew up in a world of private jets, debutante balls, and people who smiled at you while calculating your net worth. But I hated it. I saw what that money did to my mother. She died of an overdose when I was 12, crushed by the pressure of being perfect, of being a display doll for my father's ambitions. On her deathbed, she grabbed my hand and whispered, "Audrey, find someone who loves you for your soul, not your signature." I took that to heart. When I turned 25, I made a deal with my grandfather. I would step away from the family business, use a different last name, and live like a normal person. I wanted to find love, real, messy, uncomplicated love. That was how I met Derek 3 years ago. He was charming then. He was a struggling, ambitious man running a small construction firm. He didn't have a trust fund. He had calluses on his hands and a dream in his eyes. When he looked at me, he didn't see the Sterling heiress, he saw Audrey, the administrative assistant who liked cheap Thai food and bad movies. Or so I thought. I remember the day I introduced him to my best friend, Valery. Valery was the only one outside family who knew my secret. She looked at Derek across the table at a diner, her eyes narrowing as he talked about his vision for his company. Later that night, Valery called me. "He's hungry, Aud," she warned, her voice serious. "And I don't mean for dinner. He looks at you like you're an acquisition, not a partner. Are you sure he doesn't know who you are?" He doesn't, I insisted, brushing my hair in the mirror, smiling like a fool. He thinks I'm an orphan. He thinks I have nothing. He loves me, Val. Just be careful, she sighed. Sometimes, men who come from nothing are the most dangerous. They feel the world owes them a debt, and they'll collect it from anyone close enough. I should have listened. I really should have listened. We got married 6 months later. It was a small ceremony. My grandfather didn't come. Part of our deal was that I had to live completely separate if I wanted to prove I could do it. I stood at the altar in a dress I bought off the rack, looking into Derek's eyes, promising to love him for richer or poorer. For the first year, it was good. We struggled. We laughed about paying bills. I felt normal. I felt loved. But then, Derek's ambition started to curdle into something toxic. His company, Coleman Construction, hit a rough patch. He was on the verge of bankruptcy. He would come home late, smelling of stress and cheap whiskey, yelling at the walls. I need capital, he would shout, pacing our small living room. I have the ideas, Audrey, I just need the money. Why is the world so unfair? I couldn't stand seeing him in pain. I broke my own rule. I contacted the family trust. I set up a shell company, an angel investor group. I funneled $5 million into Coleman Construction. I made it look like a stroke of luck, a mysterious investor who believed in his vision. I remember the day he got the funding email. He picked me up and spun me around, tears in his eyes. We did it, Audrey. I'm going to give you the world. You'll never have to worry about anything again. I thought I had saved our happiness. I thought I was being a good wife. I didn't know I had just signed my own death warrant. Money is like gasoline, it can fuel a journey, or it can burn the house down. In Derek's case, it fed a fire of arrogance that consumed the man I loved and left a monster in his place. As the money rolled in, Derek changed. The calluses on his hands disappeared, replaced by manicures. The cheap suits were replaced by bespoke Italian silk. And the way he looked at me, it shifted. He no longer looked at me with love. He looked at me with boredom. I was the wife from his poor days. I was a reminder of the time he was weak. And now that he was a self-made millionaire, a lie I let him believe, he decided he deserved an upgrade. Lying in the mud of the hurricane, remembering his smile from that day, a bitter laugh bubbled up in my throat. I had bought the knife he just used to stab me in the back. The rain was unrelenting, chilling me to the bone, but the coldness I felt inside was far worse. It was the memory of the last 6 months, the slow, agonizing decay of my marriage. It wasn't a sudden explosion, it was a slow poison. After the angel investments saved his company, Derek became obsessed with status. He started attending high society galas, aiming to network with the very people I had spent my life avoiding. He wanted to be seen. He wanted to be important. And I became an accessory that didn't quite fit his new aesthetic. I remember a dinner party about 4 months ago. It was at our house. We had moved into a sprawling mansion in Greenwich, Connecticut, bought with the profits from the company I secretly saved. I had spent all afternoon cooking his favorite meal, a rosemary-infused rack of lamb with a reduction sauce. Cooking was my love language. It was domestic, simple, real. Derek came home late, as usual. But he wasn't alone. He walked in, talking loudly on his phone, and trailing behind him was Tiffany Banks. She was 24, with hair the color of corn silk and eyes that looked innocent until you caught the glint of calculation in them. She was his new executive assistant. Audrey, Derek said, tossing his keys on the counter without looking at me. Tiffany needs to go over the quarterly projections. Set another plate. I swallowed my annoyance. Hello, Tiffany. It's late for work, isn't it? Tiffany smiled, a sweet, sickly expression. Oh, Mrs. Coleman, Mr. Coleman, is just so dedicated. I don't mind the hours. I want to learn from the best. We sat down to eat. The tension was palpable. Derek took one bite of the lamb, chewed it slowly, and then spat it into his napkin. It's dry, he announced, pushing the plate away. I cooked it exactly how you like it, I stammered, feeling my face heat up. Medium rare. It's overcooked, Audrey. God, can't you do anything right? He sighed, a sound of profound exhaustion, as if being married to me was a heavy burden. He turned to Tiffany, his face transforming instantly into a charming mask. You were telling me about that Italian restaurant in the city, Tiffany? The one with the actual chef? Tiffany giggled, touching his arm lightly. Oh yes. Their osso buco is divine. My grandmother taught me how to make it. Cooking requires passion, you know? You have to feel the ingredients. She cast a pitying glance at me. Maybe I could teach you some time, Mrs. Coleman. Simple recipes are easier to master for beginners. Beginner? I had attended Le Cordon Bleu workshops in Paris during my summers as a teenager. But I said nothing. I played the role of the humble, inadequate wife because I thought peace was better than being right. Derek stood up, grabbing his wine glass. I can't eat this garbage. Tiffany, let's go to the study. We'll order takeout. Something edible. He walked past me as if I were furniture. He took the bottle of vintage wine, a bottle I had saved for our anniversary, and poured a glass for Tiffany, ignoring my empty glass entirely. That night, as I scraped the expensive lamb into the trash, I heard their laughter coming from the study. It wasn't the laughter of colleagues. It was intimate. It was shared secrets. I went to the bathroom and stared at myself in the mirror. I was 32. I was beautiful, educated, and kind. Why was I letting him treat me this way? Because I kept hoping the old Derek would come back. The Derek who held me when I cried about my mother. The Derek who swore he loved me for me. But the disrespect escalated. He stopped wearing his wedding ring, claiming it chafed during golf games. He started criticizing my clothes, calling them frumpy and outdated, unaware that my cashmere sweaters cost more than Tiffany's entire wardrobe. He began talking about legacy constantly. A man isn't a man without a son, he would say over breakfast, staring pointedly at my flat stomach. We had been trying for a baby for a year with no luck. The doctors said it was stress-related, but Derek refused to get tested. In his mind, he was perfect, therefore, the failure must be mine. You're drying up, Audrey, he told me once, casually, while reading the Wall Street Journal. I need an heir. The Coleman empire needs a future. If you can't provide that, well, a CEO has to make hard decisions about underperforming assets. Underperforming assets. That's what I had become to him. Not a wife. Not a partner. A failing investment. As the rain lashed against my face in that ditch, I realized the irony. He wanted an heir for an empire that I built. He wanted a son to inherit money that ultimately came from my family. And he had just thrown the source of his wealth onto the side of the road like a bag of trash. My body was going numb from the cold, but the anger was keeping me warm. It was flaring up, fueled by memories that played out in my mind like a highlight reel of humiliation. One incident, just 2 weeks ago, stood out. It was the moment I realized this wasn't just a bad patch. It was a war, and I was losing. I had gone to Coleman Industries headquarters, a gleaming glass tower in Midtown Manhattan. I rarely went there. Derek didn't like me hovering. But he had forgotten his tuxedo jacket for a gala that evening, and being the dutiful wife, I drove into the city to deliver it. The receptionist, a new girl who didn't know me, eyed my simple trench coat with suspicion. Delivery for Mr. Coleman? You can leave it here. I'm his wife, I said quietly, enjoying the way her eyes widened in panic. I took the private elevator to the top floor. The doors opened to the executive suite, a space designed to intimidate. And there, standing by the floor-to-ceiling window, was Tiffany. She wasn't working. She was admiring a bracelet on her wrist. It was dazzling, platinum, encrusted with diamonds, glittering under the office lights. I froze. I recognized that bracelet. It was a Cartier piece from their latest collection. I had admired it in a catalog a month ago, pointing it out to Derek. It's too flashy, Audrey, he had said, dismissing it. It's a waste of capital. We need to be reinvesting, not buying trinkets. Yet, here it was. On the wrist of his 24-year-old assistant. Tiffany saw me and didn't even look guilty. She smiled, a slow, predatory curving of her lips. She held her wrist up to the light, twisting it so the diamonds sparked. "Oh, Mrs. Coleman," she purred. "You're here. Derek is in a meeting." "That's a lovely bracelet, Tiffany," I said, my voice steady despite the shaking in my hands. "Isn't it?" She sighed happily. "A gift from a very special admirer. He said it matched my eyes. He said I deserved to shine." She walked over to the coffee station. "Can I get you some coffee while you wait? You look tired. Dark circles are so hard to get rid of at your age, aren't they?" "At my age?" I was 32, not 80. "No, thank you," I said, stepping forward to put the jacket on the couch. "Oh, nonsense, let me help," she insisted. She picked up a steaming mug of black coffee. As she turned toward me, her eyes locked with mine. There was no stumble. There was no trip. I saw the deliberate tilt of her wrist. "Oops," she chirped. The scalding liquid splashed across my chest and down my left hand. "Ah!" I cried out, the pain instantaneous and searing. My skin turned angry red within seconds. I gasped, clutching my hand, tears springing to my eyes. The door to Derek's office burst open. He strode out, looking annoyed at the noise. "What is going on out here?" "I'm on a call." "Derek!" Tiffany cried out before I could speak. She dropped the mug on the floor, shattering it, and shrank back against the wall, trembling theatrically. I was just trying to be nice. I offered her coffee and she slapped my hand. She said I wasn't fit to serve her. It was a lie so bold, so ridiculous, that I was struck dumb. "What?" "Derek," she threw it on me. "Look at my hand." I held up my hand, which was blistering. The evidence was right there. Derek didn't even look at my injury. He rushed to Tiffany, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "Are you okay? Did the ceramic cut you? Did she hurt you?" "I'm scared, Derek," Tiffany sobbed into his expensive shirt. "She's so aggressive. I don't feel safe." Derek turned to me, his eyes cold and hard as flint. "What is wrong with you, Audrey? You come into my place of business, dressed like a frump, and attack my staff? Jealousy is an ugly look on you." "Derek, look at me!" I shouted, the pain in my heart eclipsing the burn on my skin. "I am burned." "She is lying. She's wearing the bracelet you told me was too expensive." His face darkened. He stepped between me and Tiffany, shielding her. "That is a performance bonus. She earned it. She works hard. Unlike you, who sits at home spending my money. Now get out. Go home. You're embarrassing me." "But..." I said get out, he roared, pointing at the elevator. "And don't you dare come back here until you can learn to control your hysterical outbursts." I looked at him, the man I had saved from ruin, the man I loved. He was wiping a speck of coffee off Tiffany's designer shoe, completely ignoring his wife standing there with a blistering burn. I turned and walked to the elevator, holding my injured hand against my chest. As the doors closed, I saw Tiffany smirk over his shoulder. She mouthed one word to me. Winner. That was the moment I realized there was no saving this marriage. But I was still holding on to a shred of dignity, thinking I could leave quietly. I didn't know then that he wasn't just cheating on me. He was planning to replace me entirely. The burn on my hand eventually healed, leaving a faint scar. But the scar on my soul from that day? That was what gave me the strength to survive what was coming next. The humiliation at the office was the smoke, but finding the ultrasound was the fire that burned everything down. It happened 3 days before the hurricane. 3 days before he tried to kill me. Derek had come home late again, drunk and sloppy. He collapsed onto the bed without changing. I, the ever-dutiful fool, went to hang up his suit jacket. As I smoothed the fabric, I felt something stiff in the inside pocket. I pulled it out. It was a glossy piece of paper, folded into a square. My heart hammered against my ribs as I unfolded it. It was a medical image. Grainy black and white shadows. A baby. I scanned the text at the top. Patient, Tiffany Banks. Gestational age, 32 weeks. 32 weeks. That's 8 months. The world tilted on its axis. 8 months? That meant this affair started almost immediately after I gave him the money to save his company. While I was at home, researching fertility treatments, blaming myself for not conceiving, crying over negative pregnancy tests, he had already gotten her pregnant. He wasn't just cheating. He was living a double life. I stared at the sleeping man in my bed. He looked peaceful. How could someone so evil look so peaceful? I shook him awake. Derek. Wake up. He grunted, swatting my hand away. Leave me alone. Derek. I screamed, turning on the bedside lamp. I threw the ultrasound photo at his chest. What is this? Explain this to me right now. He blinked, shielding his eyes from the light. He looked down at the paper, and then looked at me. There was no panic. No guilt. No frantic apology. He sat up slowly, rubbing his face. He actually yawned. You went through my pockets? That's a violation of privacy, Audrey. Privacy? I choked out a laugh that sounded like a sob. She's 8 months pregnant, Derek. You have a child with her. How could you? He stood up, towering over me. He didn't cower. He went on the offensive. Yes. I have a child coming. A son, Audrey. A boy. He said the word boy with a reverence he had never shown me. So? I whispered. That makes it okay? It makes it necessary, he stated coldly. Look at you. We've been trying for a year. Nothing. You're barren. My family needs an heir. I built this empire from nothing, a lie he told himself so often he believed it, and I need someone to leave it to. Tiffany gave me what you couldn't. He walked over to the dresser and poured himself a glass of water, acting as if we were discussing the weather. I was going to tell you eventually. Once the boy was born. And then what? I asked, trembling. You expect me to stay? He turned to me, his eyes empty of any emotion. You have 2 choices, Audrey. Choice A, you stay. You accept the child. We bring him here. You raise him. You can be the mother in public. Tiffany understands her role, she's discreet. We maintain the image of the perfect couple. I felt bile rise in my throat. You want me to raise your mistress's bastard child? He is my heir, he snapped. And yes, it's a good deal for you. You get to keep the lifestyle. You get to keep the Mrs. Coleman title. And choice B? I asked, my voice deadly quiet. He sneered. We divorce. But let me be clear. I have the best lawyers in the city. You signed a prenup. I hadn't, actually, but he thought his intimidation would work. You have no job. No family support. You're an orphan. If you leave with nothing. No alimony. No house. You'll be back to waiting tables in some diner. He stepped closer, invading my personal space. So, what's it going to be? The life of luxury with a small compromise? Or the street? He thought he had me trapped. He thought I was the poor, helpless girl he rescued. He didn't know about the trust fund. He didn't know about the sterling lawyers who could eat him for breakfast. I looked at him, realizing that the man standing before me was a sociopath. He didn't feel love. He felt ownership. I need time, I lied. I needed to get my ducks in a row. I needed to call my grandfather. Fine, he said, dismissing me. We're going to my grandmother's birthday in the Hamptons this weekend. You will smile. You will play the happy wife. And after that, we settled the arrangements for the baby. That was why I was in the car during the hurricane. I was playing the part one last time, waiting for the storm to pass so I could destroy him legally. I didn't know he would try to destroy me physically first. But now, back in the ditch, wet and bleeding, I realized the time for playing nice was over. He had broken the contract of marriage. He had tried to kill me. It was time to introduce him to Audrey Sterling. The rain was slowing down, but the wind was still fierce. I checked my body. My knees were bloody, my palms scraped raw, but nothing was broken. The adrenaline was fading, replaced by a cold, sharp clarity. Derek Coleman thought I was helpless. He thought I was just Audrey, the orphan. He had driven away thinking he had discarded a piece of trash. He was wrong. I reached into the inner lining of my coat. Derek had thrown my purse into the mud, but I had something he didn't know about. Sewn into the lining of my coat, a habit from my paranoid childhood after a kidnapping scare, was a burner phone. A secure line. My fingers, numb and shaking, struggled to rip the stitching. Finally, I got it out. It was a small, rugged device. I powered it on. The battery was at 40%. Thank God. I dialed the one number I had memorized but promised never to use unless my life was in danger. It rang once. Twice. This is a secure line. Identify, a deep voice answered. It wasn't my grandfather, it was his head of security, Marcus. Marcus, I croaked, my voice hoarse from screaming. It's Audrey. Audrey Sterling. There was a pause. Then the tone shifted instantly to urgent professionalism. Miss Audrey? Your GPS is showing you on I-95. The hurricane sector. Are you in a vehicle? No, I whispered, tears mixing with the rain on my face. I'm on the side of the road. Mile marker 142. My husband, he threw me out of the car. He left me here. He did what? The voice changed. It was my grandfather. He must have snatched the phone. Audrey? Are you hurt? Hearing his voice, the voice of the man who raised me, the Lion of the Senate, broke me. Grandpa, he left me. He went to his mistress. He said her son was worth more than me. I'm cold, Grandpa. I'm so cold. Listen to me, Ellie, he used my childhood nickname. His voice was trembling with a rage I had never heard before. Stay exactly where you are. Do not move. I am sending the extraction team. They are 5 minutes out. We were tracking the storm, we have assets nearby. Okay, I sobbed. And Audrey? Yes. He's a dead man walking, my grandfather said. The line went dead. I huddled against the guardrail, waiting. About 20 minutes later, I saw headlights. Not from the direction the rescue team would come, but from the direction Derek had gone. The black SUV returned. He was coming back. Not because he loved me. I knew him too well. He was coming back because he realized that if I died, and a body was found, he would be a suspect. Or maybe the flooded exit was impassable, and he needed to turn back. The car screeched to a halt on the shoulder. Derek jumped out. The rain had lightened to a drizzle. Get in, he screamed, looking frantic. The road ahead is completely flooded. We have to go back. Hurry up, you idiot. He didn't ask if I was okay. He just ordered me. I stood up slowly, swaying slightly. I looked at him. What are you waiting for? He yelled, running toward me. I don't have time for your drama. Tiffany is. Suddenly, the night turned into day. Blinding white floodlights cut through the darkness from behind me. The roar of heavy engines drowned out the wind. Derek froze, shielding his eyes. What the hell? 3 massive, armored Cadillac Escalades, black, with government plates and flashing blue tactical lights, screeched to a halt around us. They moved with military precision, boxing Derek's car in. Doors flew open. 6 men in tactical gear with rifles stepped out. They didn't aim at me. They aimed at Derek. Step away from her, a voice boomed over a loudspeaker. Get on your knees. Now. Derek looked terrified. Who are you? I'm Derek Coleman. I'm a CEO. This is my wife, we're just having a dispute. Ground. Now. 2 agents rushed forward, kicked Derek's legs out from under him, and slammed him face first into the wet asphalt. Hey! That's assault, he screamed, his face pressed into the mud. A 4th car pulled up. It was a sleek, armored limousine. The back door opened, and a man stepped out under a large umbrella held by an aide. It was Harrison Clark, my grandfather's personal attorney and the executor of the Sterling Trust. He was wearing a pristine suit, looking like he had just stepped out of a boardroom, completely unbothered by the hurricane. He walked past Derek, who was struggling in the mud, and came straight to me. He took off his cashmere coat and wrapped it around my shoulders. Audrey, he said softly, his eyes scanning my injuries with intense worry. I'm so sorry we're late. I pulled the coat tighter. Hello, Harrison. Derek lifted his head from the mud, spitting out grit. He looked at the armed men, then at the limousine, and finally at Harrison treating me like royalty. Audrey? Derek stammered, his eyes wide with confusion and fear. Who are these people? You're an orphan. You don't know people like this. I walked over to where he lay pinned to the ground. I looked down at him. The power dynamic had shifted so violently the air crackled with it. I never said I was poor, Derek, I said, my voice cold and steady. I just said I wanted to be loved for me. You failed the test. I turned to Harrison. Get me out of here. The ride back to the Sterling estate in the Hudson Valley was silent, but it was the silence of a gathering storm. I sat in the back of the armored limousine, wrapped in a heated blanket, sipping hot tea laced with brandy. Harrison sat opposite me, typing furiously on his tablet. Are you okay? He asked without looking up, though I knew he was watching me. Harrison and I had grown up together. He was the son of my grandfather's partner. He had always been the quiet, steady presence in my life, the opposite of Derek's flashy charm. No, I said honestly. But I will be. We arrived at the estate. The massive iron gates swung open, revealing the stone mansion that had stood for 100 years. It was a fortress of old money and power. My grandfather was waiting in the library. He was sitting in his wheelchair by the roaring fire, a tartan blanket over his knees. Despite his frailty, his eyes were sharp as hawks. When I walked in, he tried to stand but failed. I rushed to him, kneeling beside his chair, burying my face in his hands. "I'm sorry, Grandpa," I wept. "I should have listened. You were right." He stroked my hair, his hand trembling with rage. "Hush, Ellie. You have a good heart. You trusted. That is not a sin. The sin is his betrayal." He looked up at Harrison, who was standing by the door. "Report." Harrison stepped forward. "Derek Coleman is currently being detained by the local police for reckless endangerment, but he'll likely make bail by morning. He's heading to Mount Sinai Hospital. Apparently, his mistress, Tiffany Banks, has been admitted." "The baby?" I asked, my voice small. "Born an hour ago," Harrison said. "Premature, but stable." My grandfather's eyes narrowed. "He threw my granddaughter into a hurricane for our mistress." "I want him destroyed, Harrison. Not just hurt. Destroyed." "I've already begun," Harrison said, his voice cool and professional. "I initiated the Scorched Earth protocol we set up in the prenuptial agreement, the one he signed without reading because he thought he was marrying a pauper." I remembered that day. I had told Derek it was just standard paperwork for life insurance. He was so busy looking at himself in the mirror he just scribbled his name. "The clause states that in the event of infidelity, the angel investor loan becomes immediately due in full, with compound interest," Harrison explained. "I have contacted the Treasury Department. Because the initial investment was routed through offshore accounts for anonymity, we have flagged his company for potential money laundering investigation. It's a standard freeze procedure." "What does that mean?" I asked. "It means," my grandfather said with a dark smile, "that as of 10 minutes ago, every bank account, credit card, and asset attached to Derek Coleman or Coleman Industries is frozen. He cannot buy a pack of gum, let alone pay a hospital bill." "And the house?" I asked. "The house I had decorated. The house I had turned into a home. Technically owned by the shell company," Harrison said. "I've already issued an eviction notice. The locks are being changed as we speak." "Good," my grandfather grunted. "But that's just money. I want his reputation. I want his pride." "We have the footage," Harrison said gently. "The convoy dashcam recorded him admitting he threw you out. It recorded him screaming about his heir. We aren't releasing it to the press yet. We're keeping it for the grand finale." I stood up, walking to the window. The storm outside had passed, leaving a quiet, battered world. I felt like that world. "He wants a son," I whispered. "That's all he cares about. His legacy." Harrison cleared his throat. "About that. I took the liberty of running a background check on Miss Tiffany Banks. The deep dive. Not the superficial one Derek did." He tapped his tablet and projected an image onto the library TV screen. It was a photo of Tiffany, looking younger, hanging off the arm of a heavy-set older man at a car dealership. Tiffany Banks isn't her real name. It's Jessica Miller. She has a history of targeting wealthy men. But here is the interesting part. Harrison swiped to a timeline. Based on the conception date Derek believes, she was with him. But based on her credit card receipts and hotel logs, she was also spending weekends with a Mr. Harrington. A used car tycoon from Jersey. "You think the baby isn't his?" I asked, a jolt of shock running through me. "I don't know," Harrison said. "But the timeline is messy. Very messy. And for a man obsessed with a pure bloodline legacy, doubt is a powerful weapon. My grandfather laughed, a dry, rasping sound. Let him have his moment of joy. Let him think he has won. And then, take it all away. I turned back to them. The weeping girl in the mud was gone. Freeze the accounts, I commanded, my voice matching the sterling steel. Let him try to pay for his precious son with a declined card. I want to be the one to tell him it's over. Done, Harrison said. The game had changed. Derek was playing checkers. We were playing 4D chess. While I was sipping vintage brandy by a fire, Derek Coleman was living out a very different reality. Harrison had people everywhere, so I know exactly what happened at the hospital. It gives me a profound sense of satisfaction to recount it. Derek arrived at the hospital, drenched, muddy, and looking like a maniac. He stormed into the maternity ward, demanding to see his son. The nurses, terrified of this screaming man, led him to the room. Tiffany was there, holding a bundle. She looked exhausted, her makeup smeared, the glamour stripped away. Derek, she cried out when she saw him. Where were you? I was so scared. The storm, the car. Derek panted, rushing to the bedside. He didn't ask how she was. He looked at the bundle. Is he okay? Is he healthy? My boy? Tiffany bit her lip. She looked down at the baby. About that. What? Derek froze. Is something wrong with him? He isn't a he, Tiffany whispered. Derek blinked. What? It's a girl, Derek, she said, her voice trembling. The ultrasound, they must have read it wrong. Or the umbilical cord was in the way. It's a girl. A girl. Derek stepped back as if he had been slapped. The heir he had sacrificed his marriage for, the son he had thrown his wife into a hurricane to save, didn't exist. A girl, he repeated, his voice hollow. But I need a son. She's healthy, Tiffany offered weakly. She's beautiful. Derek didn't touch the baby. He didn't hold her. He ran a hand through his wet hair, pacing the room. This messes up the plan. The trust structure, the legacy branding, it was all for a son. Derek, she's your daughter. Tiffany cried, offended. How can you be so cold? Cold? He laughed, a manic sound. I just destroyed my life for this. I left Audrey on the side of the road. Before the argument could escalate, a hospital administrator walked in with a clipboard. Mr. Coleman? We need to process the payment for the private birthing suite and the NICU standby team. It's a standard deposit for uninsured admissions. Uninsured? Derek snapped. I have the best insurance money can buy. Your policy was flagged as inactive an hour ago, sir, the administrator said. But you can pay via credit card. It's $20,000 for the deposit. Fine, Derek growled. He pulled out his wallet. The same black Amex Centurion card he used to flash at dinners to impress people. He tossed it at the administrator. Run it. The administrator swiped the card on his portable tablet. Beep. Declined. Try it again, Derek snapped. It's a black card. It has no limit. Beep. Declined, contact issuer. There must be a mistake, Derek muttered, sweat beading on his forehead. He pulled out his Visa. Then his MasterCard. Then his corporate expense card. Beep. 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 Transaction not authorized. Account frozen. Refer to bank. The silence in the room was deafening. The baby started to cry, a thin, wailing sound. Mr. Coleman, the administrator said, his voice losing its politeness. Do you have another form of payment? I. Derek checked his banking app on his phone. He logged in. His eyes bulged. Total balance, $0. Status, frozen by order of U.S. Dept of Treasury. What is going on? He whispered. He frantically dialed his CFO. Pick up, he hissed. Finally, the CFO answered. Mr. Coleman? Thank God. The FBI is here. They're seizing the servers. They say there's an investigation into money laundering. Every account is locked. We can't make payroll. We can't pay vendors. We are dead in the water. Who did this? Derek screamed into the phone. Who has the power to do this in 1 hour on a Sunday night? And then, he remembered. He remembered the armored convoy. He remembered the government plates. He remembered the man in the suit treating me like a queen. He remembered my words, I never said I was poor. The phone slipped from his hand and hit the hospital floor. Audrey, he breathed. Tiffany looked at him, panic rising in her eyes. Derek? What's wrong? Pay the man so we can get a private room. This one is too small. Derek looked at his mistress, the woman who had lied about the baby's gender, the woman who was costing him a fortune he no longer had. I can't, he whispered. I'm broke. What? Tiffany screeched. What do you mean broke? I mean zero, he roared, startling the baby into a louder scream. It's gone. She took it all. Audrey took it all. For the first time in his life, Derek Coleman realized he wasn't the king of the chessboard. He was just a pawn. And the queen had just made her first move. But if he thought being broke was bad, he had no idea what was coming next. Because Harrison Clark was just warming up, and I had a paternity test kit ready to go. The morning after the hurricane, the sky was a brilliant, mocking blue. While I was safe behind the iron gates of the Sterling estate, strategizing with my grandfather, Derek was facing the wreckage of his life. He hadn't slept. He had spent the night in a plastic chair in the hospital waiting room because his credit cards were declined for a private room. Tiffany was furious, the baby was crying, and the nurses were treating him like a vagrant. But Derek Coleman is a man of ego. He convinced himself this was a glitch. A banking error. He told Tiffany to sit tight while he went to the office to straighten things out. He put on his wrinkled, mud-stained suit from the night before and took a cab to Coleman Industries. He expected to walk into his corner office, bark orders at his CFO, and fix everything. Instead, he walked into a crime scene. Bright yellow tape crisscrossed the glass doors of his building. Do not enter, seized by federal order. 2 armed marshals stood guard. Hey! Derek shouted, marching up to them. This is my building. What are you doing? Step back, sir, one marshal said, hand resting on his holster. This property is under the control of the receivership. Receivership? I'm the CEO. Not anymore. A voice cut through the chaos. Smooth. Calm. Deadly. Derek turned to see Harrison Clark leaning against a black sedan parked at the curb. Harrison looked impeccable in a navy Tom Ford suit, holding a leather briefcase. He looked like everything Derek wanted to be but never quite achieved. Harrison, Derek snarled, marching over. You're Audrey's lawyer dog. What did you do to my accounts? Fix this now, or I'll sue you for tortious interference. Harrison didn't flinch. He just smiled, a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Get in the car, Derek. We need to talk. And since you don't have an office anymore, this will have to do. Derek hesitated, looking at the marshals, then at the sealed doors. He realized he had no choice. He got into the back of the sedan. Harrison handed him a thick document. What is this? Derek asked, flipping through it. That, Harrison said, is the loan agreement for the $5 million capital injection you received 3 years ago. The angel investor funding that saved you from bankruptcy. I know what it is, Derek spat. The Horizon Group. They believed in me. Horizon Group is a shell company, Derek, Harrison said softly. Look at the signature on the beneficiary page. Derek flipped to the back. His eyes narrowed. He squinted at the signature. Audrey V. Sterling. The silence in the car was absolute. Derek looked up, his face draining of color. Audrey? Audrey gave me the money? She didn't want you to fail, Harrison said. She believed in you. She used her own inheritance to save your ego. She wanted you to feel like a man, so she did it anonymously. She bought your success, Derek. No, Derek whispered, shaking his head. I built this. You built nothing. Harrison's voice snapped like a whip. You managed the money she gave you. And if you read Clause 14, Section B, the Morality Clause, you'll see that in the event of marital infidelity or criminal misconduct, the loan is immediately recalled in full. Plus interest. Plus penalties. Harrison leaned in close. You owe the Sterling Trust $7 million. Payable yesterday. I don't have $7 million liquid, Derek stammered. It's all tied up in assets. Assets which are now ours, Harrison corrected. We are foreclosing on the company. We are foreclosing on the Greenwich house. We are seizing your cars. Even the watch on your wrist was purchased with company funds, which makes it stolen property. Derek covered his Rolex instinctively. You have nothing, Derek, Harrison continued ruthlessly. Actually, you have less than nothing. You have debt. You have a mistress who thinks you're rich. And you have a baby girl that you don't even want. Audrey is doing this? Derek asked, his voice trembling. She's this cruel? Cruel? Harrison laughed, a cold, sharp sound. You threw her out of a moving vehicle in a Category 4 hurricane. You told her she was worth less than your heir. You are lucky she is only taking your money. If it were up to me, I'd take your life. Harrison opened the car door. Get out. Where am I supposed to go? Derek asked, looking at the busy street. I have no cash. My cards are frozen. Harrison reached into his pocket and pulled out a $20 bill. He tossed it onto Derek's lap. Take a bus, Harrison said. Audrey sends her regards. Derek stood on the sidewalk, clutching the $20, watching the black sedan merge into traffic. The realization hit him like a physical blow. The orphan he had bullied, the wife he had called useless, she had owned him the entire time. She held the leash, and he had been too stupid to notice until he bit the hand that fed him. He wasn't a king. He was a beggar in a stolen suit. The fall of Derek Coleman wasn't a slide, it was a cliff dive. When he returned to the hospital, he had to sneak past the billing department. He entered Tiffany's room looking like a ghost. Well? Tiffany demanded. She was breastfeeding the baby, scrolling on her phone. Did you fix it? The nurse said if we don't pay by noon, they're discharging us. I can't leave yet, Derek. I need to recover. Derek sank into the chair. We have to leave, Tiff. What? We have to leave. Now. Where are we going? The Greenwich house? Tiffany asked, perking up. Finally! I've been dying to redecorate that place. Audrey had such boring taste. We can't go to the house, Derek mumbled, staring at the floor. The locks, they changed the locks. What do you mean? Tiffany's eyes narrowed. Who changed the locks? The bank. The lawyers. Audrey. Derek put his head in his hands. It's gone, Tiffany. The house, the cars, the company. It's all gone. She took everything. Tiffany stopped scrolling. The room went deadly quiet. Define everything. I mean, I have $20 in my pocket and a lawsuit for $7 million, Derek admitted. We have nowhere to go. Tiffany screamed. It wasn't a cry of sadness, it was a shriek of rage. You lied to me. You said you were a tycoon. You said you were leaving that frumpy wife because you needed a queen. I didn't sign up for poverty, Derek. We can rebuild. Derek pleaded, grabbing her hand. She snatched it away. I still have my contacts. I have my reputation. But he didn't. By the time they dragged their luggage out of the hospital, taking a cab that Derek had to haggle to pay for later, the news had broken. Harrison had leaked the story to the financial press. Coleman Industries CEO ousted amid fraud allegations. Hurricane horror, did billionaire throw wife to the wolves? When Derek tried to call his contacts, the golf buddies, the investors, the politicians he had bribed, nobody answered. His number was toxic. They ended up at a Motel 6 on the outskirts of Queens. It was the only place that would take cash for a single night without a credit card hold. The room smelled of stale cigarettes and despair. The carpet was sticky. Tiffany stood in the middle of the room, holding the baby carrier, looking around in horror. This is it, she hissed. This is where you bring your heir? It's temporary. Derek yelled, the stress finally snapping his composure. Stop complaining. At least we have a roof. Do you know what I've been through today? I lost my entire life. You lost my life. Tiffany threw her diaper bag on the bed. I could have been with Mr. Harrington. He bought me diamonds. You brought me to a roach motel. Then go back to Harrington. Derek screamed back. Maybe I will. The baby started wailing. It was a piercing, hungry cry. She needs formula, Tiffany said, sitting on the edge of the stained mattress, refusing to look at him. I'm too stressed to nurse. Go buy formula. I don't have money for formula. Derek shouted. Then steal it. Tiffany glared at him with pure hatred. You're the man, aren't you? Provide. That night, Derek Coleman, the man who used to drink $500 bottles of scotch, found himself standing in a convenience store aisle, slipping a can of baby formula under his coat. His heart pounded. He was sweating. He was terrified. He walked out, waiting for the alarm to sound. It didn't. He got away with it. He walked back to the motel in the rain, a light drizzle compared to the hurricane, but enough to soak his last good pair of shoes. He felt a strange mixture of relief and self-loathing. He had become a criminal for this woman. For this child. But as he fed the baby that night, looking at her tiny face, a thought crept in. A thought planted by Harrison's words earlier that day. Based on the timeline, she was also spending weekends with a Mr. Harrington. Derek looked at the baby's nose. It was button-shaped. His nose was aquiline. Tiffany's nose was sharp. He looked at her eyes. They were blue. He had brown eyes. Tiffany had green eyes. Blue eyes are recessive, he muttered to himself. It's possible. My grandmother had blue eyes. But the doubt was there. It was a worm eating its way through his brain. Across the room, Tiffany was sleeping, snoring lightly. Her phone lit up on the nightstand. A text message. Derek knew he shouldn't. But he was a desperate man. He crept over and picked up the phone. It was locked, but he knew her passcode. It was her birthday. 12:34, simple, just like her. He opened her messages. The text was from a number saved as Big Daddy H. Text, I heard Coleman crashed and burned. You okay, baby? Offer still stands if you ditch the loser. Derek's hands shook. He scrolled up. He saw photos. Photos of Tiffany in a hotel room he didn't recognize. Dated 8 months ago. He dropped the phone on the bed. Tiffany stirred but didn't wake. He looked at the baby again. The baby he had sacrificed Audrey for. The baby he was currently stealing formula for. Was she even his? The domino effect had started with his finances, but now it was hitting his sanity. If this baby wasn't his, then his betrayal wasn't just evil, it was pointless. He would be the punchline of the cruelest joke in history. He needed to know. Harrison had mentioned a DNA test. Derek went into the bathroom. He saw the baby's hairbrush, a soft bristle brush Tiffany used for bonding. There were fine strands of baby hair in it. He pulled them out, carefully wrapping them in a piece of toilet paper. Then he pulled a hair from his own head. He put both samples in his pocket. Tomorrow, he would pawn his watch. Not for food. Not for rent. But for a paternity test. He had to know if he was a father, or just a fool. The next 3 days in that motel room were a study in psychological warfare. Tiffany was relentless. She complained about the scratchy towels, the noise from the highway, and the lack of room service. She refused to lift a finger, claiming she was postpartum and fragile, forcing Derek to wait on her hand and foot. He was running errands, cleaning bottles in the bathroom sink, and dodging the motel manager who was asking for the next night's payment. He had pawned his Rolex for a fraction of its value, $4,000 for a $20,000 watch. The pawn shop owner knew who he was, the news was everywhere. He smirked as he handed Derek the cash, knowing Derek had no leverage to negotiate. With that money, Derek paid for a week at the motel. Tiffany refused to move to a shelter, and bought some groceries. But he kept $500 hidden in his sock. On Tuesday morning, while Tiffany was in the shower using up all the hot water, Derek slipped out. He took the bus to a private lab in Queens that advertised rush paternity results 24 hours. He filled out the forms with a shaking hand. Alleged father, Derek Coleman. Child, baby Jane Doe. He didn't want to use her real name. How fast can I get this? He asked the technician, sliding the cash across the counter. For this price? Tomorrow afternoon, the tech said, chewing gum. We'll email you. Derek walked back to the motel, the weight of the secret pressing on his chest. When he got back, the atmosphere in the room had shifted. Tiffany was sitting on the bed, holding her phone, looking pale. What's wrong? Derek asked, putting down a bag of cheap sandwiches. Someone posted photos online, she whispered. What photos? Of me. From before. Harrison was relentless. He hadn't just destroyed Derek, he was systematically dismantling Tiffany too. He had leaked the photos of Tiffany's escort days to the gossip blogs. The headline read, From Stripper Pole to CEO Mistress, the gold digger who sank Coleman Industries. They're calling me a whore, Derek, she sobbed. They're saying the baby isn't yours. Look at the comments. Derek took the phone. The comments were brutal. User 123, look at that baby pic. That kid looks like the car dealer guy, Harrington. Look at the chin. Truth seeker, Coleman got played. Dude's a simp. Threw away a sterling heiress for community property. Is it true? Derek asked quietly. What? Tiffany looked up, her tears stopping instantly. Her eyes hardened. Are you listening to internet trolls over me? I am the mother of your child. I saw the text, Tiffany, Derek said. From Big Daddy H. Tiffany froze. You went through my phone? You went through my pockets to find the ultrasound, Derek countered. We're even. Did you sleep with Harrington while you were with me? Tiffany stood up, getting in his face. So what if I did? You were married. You were sleeping with your wife. Don't act like a saint, Derek. I needed insurance. You were taking too long to leave her. Did you sleep with him during the conception window? Derek roared. I don't know, she screamed back. I don't keep a spreadsheet. But you're the one with the fertility issues, aren't you? Audrey couldn't get pregnant. Maybe you are the problem. Maybe I needed a little help to give you the air you wanted so bad. It was a confession without a confession. Derek felt like the room was spinning. She had just admitted she might have gotten pregnant by another man just to trap him. I took a test, he said, his voice trembling with rage. I went to a lab this morning. I'll know tomorrow. Tiffany's face went white. The arrogance vanished, replaced by pure, unadulterated fear. She knew. Deep down, she knew the gamble she had taken. You can't trust those labs, she stammered, backing away. They make mistakes. We'll see, Derek said, sitting down in the sticky armchair, staring at her. We'll see. That night was the longest of his life. He sat in the dark, listening to the baby breathe, wondering if he was looking at his daughter or the evidence of his own stupidity. The next afternoon, the email notification pinged on his phone. Derek's heart stopped. He stared at the screen. The subject line, Confidential Lab Results, Case Number 9902. His thumb hovered over the email. This was it. The moment of truth. Inside this digital envelope was the answer that would either redeem his sacrifice or confirm that he was the biggest fool in New York. The baby was crying in the crib. Tiffany was in the bathroom, applying makeup, pretending everything was fine, preparing to go beg Mr. Harrington for money if things went south. Derek took a deep breath. If you are listening to this story and your heart is pounding like mine was, please, pause for a second. Scroll down, hit that like button, and comment the number 1. Let me know you're with me. Let me know you want to see justice served. Your support keeps me telling this story. Comment 1 right now if you're ready for the truth. Derek clicked open. The PDF loaded slowly on the motel's terrible Wi-Fi. The loading circle spun and spun, mocking him. Finally, the document popped up. It was full of medical jargon, genetic markers, and numbers. Derek scrolled past all of it, his eyes hunting for the summary section at the bottom. Conclusion. Based on the analysis of the allelic data, the alleged father, Derek Coleman, is excluded as the biological father of the child. Probability of paternity, 0%. Derek read it again. And again. 0. Not 1%. Not inconclusive. 0. The world went silent. The sound of the traffic outside, the baby crying, the water running in the bathroom, it all faded into a dull buzz. He started to laugh. It began as a low chuckle in his chest and erupted into a loud, broken, terrifying cackle. He laughed until tears streamed down his face. He laughed because if he didn't, he would have to rip his own heart out to stop the pain. He had thrown Audrey, his beautiful, loyal, secret billionaire wife, into a hurricane. He had lost a company worth millions. He had lost his reputation. He was living in a roach motel. All for this. All for a baby that belonged to a used car salesman. The bathroom door opened. Tiffany stepped out, dressed in a tight skirt, trying to look like her old self. What's so funny? She asked, eyeing him nervously. Did you crack up? Derek stood up. He felt strangely calm. The calm of a man who has nothing left to lose. He turned the phone screen toward her. Read it, he whispered. Tiffany squinted at the screen. Her eyes widened. She gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "No," she whispered. "That's wrong. That's impossible." 0%, Tiffany, Derek said, stepping closer. 0. It must be a lab error, she shrieked, backing up until she hit the wall. "Derek, look at her. She has your ears. She has Harrington's nose." Derek roared, the calm shattering instantly. He grabbed a vase from the dresser, a cheap plastic thing with fake flowers, and hurled it at the wall next to her head. Crash. "You lied to me," he screamed, his voice raw. "You let me destroy my marriage. You let me throw my wife out of a car. For what? For a lie? I did it for us." Tiffany yelled back, crying now, tears streaming through her makeup. "I wanted to give you what you wanted. You were so obsessed with a legacy. I thought if I gave you a baby, you wouldn't care who the father was. You thought I wouldn't care?" Derek lunged at her. He didn't hit her, but he grabbed her shoulders and shook her violently. "I care. It was the only reason I kept you around. You are nothing to me without that baby. You are just a greedy, empty, useless parasite. Get off me." Tiffany clawed at his face, her nails leaving deep red scratches on his cheek. "You're a loser anyway. Harrington is worth 10 times what you were. I should have stayed with him. That was the breaking point." Derek dragged her toward the door. "Then go to him. Get out." "My baby," she screamed, trying to run back to the crib. Derek grabbed the portable crib with the baby inside, thankfully she was strapped in, and shoved it into the hallway. Then he grabbed Tiffany's suitcase and threw it after her. "Derek, please. It's raining. I have nowhere to go." Tiffany grabbed the doorframe, sobbing. "We can fix this. I still love you." "Love?" Derek sneered, his face twisted in disgust. "You don't know what love is. And neither did I. But I know what hate is. And I hate you, Tiffany. I hate you more than I hate myself." He shoved her out into the fluorescent-lit hallway of the Motel 6. Other guests were opening their doors, staring. "Take your bastard child and get out of my sight," he bellowed. He slammed the door. He locked the deadbolt and the chain. From the hallway, he could hear Tiffany pounding on the door, screaming profanities, the baby wailing in terror. "Open the door, you psycho. Give me my purse. I need money." Derek slid down with his back against the door until he hit the floor. He sat there in the dark room, listening to the screams fade as security likely escorted her away. He was alone. Truly alone. He looked at his hands. The hands that had built a company with Audrey's money. The hands that had pushed Audrey out of the car. The hands that were now empty. He reached for the bottle of cheap vodka he had bought earlier. He unscrewed the cap and took a long, burning swig. "Audrey," he whispered into the darkness. "I'm so sorry." But the apology died in the empty room. It was too late. He had made his bed in hell, and now he had to sleep in it. 2 weeks later, the divorce hearing was scheduled. I insisted on being there. Harrison advised against it, saying I didn't need to see him, that the lawyers could handle it. But I needed closure. I needed to see the man who tried to kill me one last time, to make sure he was real, and not just a nightmare I had survived. The courtroom was packed. The press had eaten up the story of the hurricane heiress and the fallen CEO. I walked in wearing a white suit, Armani, sharp, pristine. It was a symbolic choice. White for rebirth. White for the truth. Harrison walked beside me, his hand lightly on my back, a protective shield. When Derek walked in, a hush fell over the room. He looked terrible. He had lost at least 20 pounds. His suit was ill-fitting and clearly off the rack. He had a scruffy beard, and his eyes were bloodshot and hollow. He looked like a man who hadn't slept in a month. When he saw me, he stopped. His eyes widened. He took a step toward me, his mouth opening as if to speak. "Audrey," he croaked. I didn't blink. I didn't look away. I looked right through him. I sat down at the plaintiff's table and opened my file. The proceedings were brutal and short. Derek's lawyer, a court-appointed public defender because he couldn't afford anyone else, tried to argue for spousal support, claiming Derek had become accustomed to a certain lifestyle. Harrison stood up. He didn't shout. He simply projected a slide onto the courtroom screens. "Your Honor," Harrison said calmly. "We have evidence that Mr. Coleman attempted to murder my client by ejecting her from a vehicle during a state of emergency. We have dashcam footage from the security detail." He played the video. The courtroom gasped as the audio played. "My son's life is worth more than yours." Derek put his head on the table. He couldn't watch. Furthermore, Harrison continued, "We have evidence of massive tax fraud. Mr. Coleman used the capital investment from the Sterling Trust to purchase personal assets, yachts, jewelry for his mistress, and wrote them off as business expenses. He also bribed 3 city officials for permits." The judge, a stern woman with zero patience for nonsense, looked at Derek with pure disgust. "Mr. Coleman," she said, "I am granting the divorce immediately. You will receive 0 assets. You are also ordered to repay the $7 million loan to the Sterling Trust. Failure to do so will result in contempt." Derek nodded weakly. "Yes, Your Honor." However, the judge continued, "That is the least of your problems." The doors at the back of the courtroom burst open. 6 agents in FBI windbreakers marched in. "Derek Coleman," the lead agent announced. "You are under arrest for wire fraud, tax evasion, and attempted manslaughter." Derek stood up, confused. "Now? Here? Hands behind your back." The click of the handcuffs echoed in the silent courtroom. It was the most satisfying sound I had ever heard. Better than any symphony. As they led him away, he turned his head to look at me. He was crying. "Audrey. Audrey, please. Help me. I have nobody. I made a mistake." Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions. "Audrey. Tell them. Tell them I loved you," he screamed as they dragged him out the side door. I watched him go. I felt Harrison's hand squeeze mine. "Are you okay?" he asked. "I'm fine," I said, and I realized it was true. He's just a stranger to me now. We walked out of the courthouse into a sea of paparazzi. I didn't hide. I put on my sunglasses, lifted my chin, and walked straight to my waiting car. The next day, the headlines were everywhere: "Coleman in cuffs, the end of an era." But there was one loose end left. Tiffany. While Derek was rotting in a holding cell, unable to make bail, Tiffany was about to face a judge of a different kind. Karma has a way of finding everyone, and for Tiffany, karma looked like Mrs. Harrington. Tiffany Banks was desperate. After Derek kicked her out, she had bounced between shelters, but she couldn't handle the rules or the smell of poor people. She decided to play her trump card. She took the baby and went to Mr. Harrington's luxury car dealership in New Jersey. She knew he was married, but she figured a rich man would pay to keep a scandal quiet. She wanted hush money. She waited in the parking lot until she saw his Bentley pull in. She rushed out, baby in arms. "Big Daddy," she called out, using his gross nickname. "We need to talk." Mr. Harrington, a balding man in his 60s, turned pale. "Tiffany? Are you crazy? My wife is inside." "I don't care," Tiffany shouted. "Look at her. She has your nose. This is your daughter, and I need $10,000 right now or I'm going to the press. Keep your voice down. Harrington hissed, looking around frantically. 10,000. Cash. Or I go inside and introduce myself to Mrs. Harrington. Tiffany smirked. She thought she had one. She thought all men were weak. She was wrong. A side door opened. A woman stepped out. She was in her 50s, wearing a fur coat and enough gold jewelry to sink a ship. She had hair sprayed into a helmet of blonde defiance. This was Mrs. Harrington, and rumors said her family had connections in waste management, if you know what I mean. So this is the little tramp, Mrs. Harrington said, her voice like gravel. Honey, Mr. Harrington started. Shut up, Carl. Go inside, she ordered. He scurried away like a frightened rat. Mrs. Harrington walked up to Tiffany. She looked at the baby, then at Tiffany. Two large men in leather jackets stepped out from behind the building, flanking her. You think you can blackmail my family? Mrs. Harrington asked calmly. I just want child support, Tiffany stammered, realizing she had miscalculated. It's his child. We did a test too, sweetie, Mrs. Harrington said, pulling a paper from her purse. Carl told me everything last week. We got the DNA from the cup you left at the hotel. Guess what? Not Carl's. Tiffany froze. What? You slept around, didn't you? Mrs. Harrington laughed. This baby isn't Derek's. It isn't Carl's. God knows who the father is. You're just a mess, aren't you? Tiffany backed away. Fine. I'll leave. Just let me go. You tried to ruin my marriage, Mrs. Harrington said, her eyes cold. You rely on that pretty face to wreck homes. I think it's time you retired. She nodded to the men. One of them grabbed Tiffany, pinning her arms. She screamed, but he covered her mouth. The baby was taken gently by the other man and placed in the carrier on the ground. Don't worry, we won't hurt the kid, Mrs. Harrington said, pulling a box cutter from her pocket. But you need a reminder. A souvenir. No! Please! Tiffany's muffled scream was terrified. Mrs. Harrington stepped close. This is for every wife you laughed at. Slash. A single, deep cut ran from Tiffany's ear to the corner of her mouth. It happened so fast. Tiffany collapsed, clutching her face, blood pouring through her fingers. Fix that with contour, Mrs. Harrington spat. She threw a stack of bills on the ground, maybe a few $100. For the stitches. Now get out of Jersey before I finish the other side. Mrs. Harrington walked back inside. The thugs left. Tiffany lay on the asphalt, wailing in agony, her beauty, her only currency, destroyed forever. She ended up in the emergency room again, but this time, there was no plastic surgeon to save her. The scar healed into a jagged, purple welt that pulled her lip up in a permanent sneer. She lost her looks. She lost her leverage. She ended up moving back to her hometown in Appalachia, living in a trailer with her mother, raising a daughter whose father was a mystery, carrying the mark of her greed on her face for the rest of her life. 1 year later. The seasons had changed, and so had I. The hurricane was a distant memory, a story I told sometimes, but no longer lived. I was sitting in the conservatory of the Sterling estate. The sun was streaming through the glass, illuminating the orchids I had been tending. I had taken over the family's philanthropic arm, the Sterling Foundation. I was using my experience to help women trapped in abusive financial situations. I was busy, fulfilled, and happy. Audrey? I turned. Harrison was standing in the doorway, holding 2 glasses of lemonade. He had taken off his suit jacket, his sleeves rolled up. He looked relaxed, younger than he had a year ago. Hey, I smiled, taking a glass. Is the meeting over? It is, he said, sitting down next to me on the wicker sofa. The board approved the new shelter project. You did it, AUD. We did it, I corrected him. Harrison had been my rock. During the divorce, the media storm, the rebuilding of my life, he was there. He never pushed. He never tried to be the hero. He just stood beside me and let me be my own hero. 6 months ago, we had gone to dinner, just as friends, and I realized that the safe, steady love I had been looking for had been right in front of me since kindergarten. We started dating slowly. It was different from Derek. It wasn't fireworks and grand promises. It was quiet understanding. It was knowing someone had your back without you having to ask. I have something for you, Harrison said, reaching into his pocket. My heart skipped a beat. Was this it? He pulled out a key. A key? I asked, confused. To the cottage, he said. The one on the coast. The one you said you loved when we were kids. I bought it back from the estate. It's yours. Ours. If you want it. I looked at him. He wasn't offering me a diamond to show off. He was offering me a sanctuary. I love it, I whispered, leaning in to kiss him. It was a sweet, lingering kiss that tasted of lemonade and promise. Also, he pulled back, grinning mischievously. I have a bit of news about an old acquaintance. Derek? I asked. The name no longer caused me pain. It was just a name. He got out early on good behavior, Harrison said. Overcrowding in the prisons. He's been out for a week. Where is he? Nowhere good, Harrison said. He tried to get a job, but with a felony fraud conviction and his face all over Google, no one will touch him. He's homeless, Audrey. Sleeping in parks. I took a sip of my drink. I thought about the man who had ordered medium-rare steak and demanded an heir. I don't care, I said. And I meant it. He's the past. You are my future. Harrison squeezed my hand. That's the right answer. Now, how about we go see that cottage? I stood up, leaving the shadows of the conservatory behind, stepping into the bright sunlight with the man who truly loved me. I was Audrey Sterling, and I was finally free. But ghosts have a way of haunting the living, especially when they are hungry. Derek Coleman was unrecognizable. The year in prison had aged him 10 years. He had lost his hair, and his teeth were yellowing. He wore a dirty coat he had found in a donation bin. He smelled of alcohol and unwashed skin. He spent his days wandering Manhattan, begging for change in the shadow of the skyscrapers he used to think he owned. He saw his old colleagues sometimes, rushing to lunch. He would try to hide, ashamed, but sometimes he would catch their eyes. They would look at him with disgust and walk faster. He was invisible. One rainy Tuesday evening, he was huddled under the awning of a newsstand, shivering. He saw a magazine on the rack. Forbes Women. On the cover, radiant in a white dress, smiling with a confidence that took his breath away, was Audrey. The headline read, Audrey Sterling, the billionaire philanthropist rewriting the rules of resilience. Derek stared at the photo. She looked more beautiful than he had ever seen her. She looked powerful. He reached out to touch the glossy cover with his dirty finger. The vendor swatted his hand away. Hey! No reading unless you buy. Get out of here, bum. Derek stumbled back into the rain. He felt a surge of something painful in his chest. Regret? Yes. But also entitlement. She was his wife. He made her who she was, in his twisted mind. She owed him. If he could just talk to her, if he could just explain, she was kind. She used to be so kind. She would help him. He used the last of his change to go to an internet cafe. He searched for her schedule. He found a press release. Tonight. The Met Gala. Audrey Sterling will be hosting. The Met. Of course. A desperate plan formed in his mind. He would go there. He would wait. He would beg. She couldn't refuse him in front of the cameras. She had to have a heart. He walked 40 blocks in the rain to the Metropolitan Museum of Art. He waited behind the barricades with the screaming fans and the paparazzi. He was shivering, hungry, and delusional. He watched the limousines arrive. He saw movie stars, singers, politicians. And then, he saw it. The black Maybach with the Sterling crest. It pulled up to the red carpet. The crowd roared. Derek pushed his way to the front. "Let me through. I know her. That's my wife." People laughed at him. "Yeah, right, buddy. And I'm Elon Musk." "Audrey," he screamed, his voice cracking. The door opened. Audrey stepped out. She was wearing a gown of shimmering gold, looking like a goddess. Harrison stepped out the other side, looking dashing in a tuxedo. He took her hand. They smiled at each other, a look of genuine intimacy that Derek had never shared with anyone. The jealousy hit him like a physical blow. That should be him. That money, that fame, that woman. It was all supposed to be his. He ducked under the barricade. Security shouted, but he was fast, fueled by adrenaline and madness. He ran onto the red carpet. "Audrey!" The scream tore through the polite chatter of the red carpet. Security guards lunged, but Derek threw himself at Audrey's feet just before they grabbed him. He hit the red carpet hard, his knees skidding. He grabbed the hem of her gold dress with his filthy hands. "Audrey! Please! Look at me!" The cameras went wild. Flash. 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 Harrison stepped in front of Audrey instantly, his body a shield, his face thunderous. "Get back!" But Audrey put a hand on Harrison's arm. "Wait." She looked down. She saw the man kneeling before her. The man who had once worn Italian silk. The man who had thrown her into a hurricane. Now, he was a sobbing mess of rags and stench. "Audrey," Derek wept, looking up at her. "I'm sorry. I was wrong. I was so stupid. Tiffany, she tricked me. The baby wasn't mine. I lost everything, Audrey. I'm starving. Please. You have so much. Just give me a chance. I'll do anything. I'll be your driver. I'll be your servant. Just don't leave me like this." He was using the same line he used in the car. "My son's life is worth more than yours." Now he was saying his life was worth saving. The crowd went silent. Everyone was watching. This was the drama of the century. Audrey looked at the dirty hand clutching her gold dress. She didn't pull away in disgust. She didn't kick him. She simply stared at him with a profound, terrifying emptiness. "Derek," she said. Her voice was calm, amplified by the silence. "Yes? Yes, Ellie?" He used her nickname, hoping to trigger a memory. "The man I married died 2 years ago on I-95, she said clearly. He died the moment he chose his ego over my life. You aren't my husband. You aren't even my enemy." She leaned down slightly, her eyes locking with his bloodshot ones. "You are nothing. You are a stranger who is dirtying my dress." She stood up straight and looked at the security guards. "Please remove him." "No! Audrey! You can't do this!" Derek screamed as 2 large guards hauled him up by his armpits. He kicked and thrashed. I made you. You were nothing without me. I'm Derek Coleman. You're nobody, someone in the crowd shouted. Get a job, loser, another yelled. The crowd began to boo. Not at Audrey, but at him. They laughed. They jeered. Audrey didn't watch him being dragged away. She turned to Harrison. Shall we? She asked, offering her arm. Harrison smiled, full of pride. We shall. They walked up the stairs of the Met, the golden couple, ascending into the light. Behind them, Derek's screams faded into the New York night, swallowed by the city that eats the weak. The gala was beautiful, but I didn't stay late. I wanted to go home. As Harrison drove us back to our cottage, we preferred it to the mansion now. I felt a lightness I hadn't felt in years. The final tether had been cut. Seeing Derek like that, it didn't make me happy. It didn't make me sad. It just confirmed that I was free. I rested my head on Harrison's shoulder. Do you think I was too hard on him? Harrison kissed the top of my head. He threw you into a hurricane, Audrey. You didn't kill him. You just let him live with the consequences of his own actions. That's not cruelty. That's justice. 2 days later, I was drinking coffee and reading the paper. A small blurb on page 10 caught my eye. Unidentified homeless man found dead. A man, believed to be in his late 30s, was found deceased in Central Park this morning due to exposure and acute alcohol poisoning. Authorities are working to confirm his identity, though sources say he claimed to be a former CEO. I stared at the words. Derek. He had died alone in the cold, just as he had left me to die in the cold. The circle was complete. I didn't cry. I cut the clipping out, walked to the fireplace, and threw it into the flames. I watched the paper curl, turn black, and turn to ash. Goodbye, Derek, I whispered. Harrison walked in, carrying a basket of vegetables from our garden. Who are you talking to? No one, I smiled, turning to him. Just saying goodbye to a ghost. Good, Harrison said, putting the basket down and pulling me into a hug. Because we have a life to live. And I was thinking, maybe we should adopt a dog. Or, maybe try for a family of our own. If you want. I looked at this man, this good, kind, steady man who loved me when I was broken and cheered for me when I was strong. I think, I said, kissing him, that sounds like a perfect plan. The storm was over. The sun was out. And for the first time in my life, the forecast was clear. Thank you for listening to my story. It wasn't easy to tell, but I hope it reminds you that no matter how dark the storm is, you have the strength to survive it. You are worth more than anyone who treats you like an option. If you enjoyed this story, please like, share, and subscribe. And remember, the best revenge isn't hatred. It's happiness. Live well. You deserve it. Looking back at Audrey's journey, we witness something far greater than a simple act of revenge. We see the profound reclaiming of human dignity. This story serves as a powerful reminder that your worth is never defined by how others treat you, but by how you choose to rise after the fall. Life may throw you into the eye of the storm, but true strength lies in the quiet resilience to walk out of it with your head held high. Never let anyone convince you that you are an option when you know you are a priority. We hope this message has ignited a spark of courage within you today. What was your biggest takeaway? Please share your thoughts in the comments below, or simply type good if this lesson resonated with your heart.